All right, this is my case study, reading in the English content area. I'm Kate, and I'm doing this for the Ed 461 class. So to start off, my student profile, I gave my student the pseudonym Artemis because he reminded me of Artemis Fowl. Um, so take that for what it's worth. He's really interested in ballroom dance, and we often had to work our schedules around his ballroom dance practice. He also really likes science, and I thought it was interesting. He had some friends last year who went to nationals for National History Day. So his friends are obviously very high performing students themselves, and I think that motivated him even more to be a really hard worker. He has really high technological literacy, so he knows how to use computers, he knows how to research well, and I was really impressed by that because he was only in 7th grade. He also has the ability to video edit, and he, like I said, researches really well. When I asked him his Lexile, he said it was between 1,000 and 1,250. I think he may even be able to read at a higher level than that, just because of the sources that we looked at together. His parents are both really educated, and he was very specific with me that his dad is an English professor, and so he should do a really good job on his project. So it's obvious that academics is like a really big part of his life just generally. My first impressions of him is that he's very gifted, he's really particular, and uniquely motivated in a way that most 7th graders aren't. I was always impressed by his work ethic. I mean, he would be the one that would reach out to me during the week to say, hey, I have been working on this, or I decided to redo this, or, he was very communicative and really proactive in how he was going about his project. So he was really impressive. In class, we talked about having a fixed or a growth mindset, which is something I hadn't heard until this class. It was initially kind of worrisome because at the beginning of the semester, his parent reached out to me and said, I don't know that you can really help him. Like I said, Artemis is really self-motivated and does things on his own. He doesn't need a lot of hand-holding. And so his parent expressed concern that I had to do a project with him and that he didn't really need the help. And then when Brother Wilson was working with him in the class library, it seemed like Artemis was facing, like, skipping over things that he didn't know. So I watched for that throughout the semester, and I noticed that when he's given constructive feedback, Artemis is really quick to accept that and to do it, to implement it right away. He's very excited to learn new things. So I think he's probably used to adults working with other students at a lower level than what he knows he can do on his own. I really do think that he has a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset because he is so eager to learn, and never once in the whole time I was working with him did he say, I don't think so, or shy away from the challenge. He was always really eager to rise to a challenge. So I have some samples of his first draft. Right away, I noticed that he has a high vocabulary level. His voice was very strong, and he uses all appropriate conventions. He didn't have fragmented sentences or anything like that. He did kind of have repetitious sentences or boring sentences in the middle, just that they were all the same length. It became kind of monotonous. He also wrote way more than he needed to for a documentary. So I knew that we had to pare it down so that he could fit the time limit that's expected in the rubric. So with my plan, I really wanted to focus with him on ethos, logos, and pathos because from what I had researched, the documentaries that won at a national level all had really impactful kind of pathetic arguments, that they were really appealing to the audience's sense of emotion. And Artemis's stuff was really scholarly, and so I was worried that he was going to be deficient in that area. And then he also didn't know much about MLA citations, and he had to write this massive annotated bibliography. So I knew that we would definitely work on that just for the English content area. But then for literacy strategies, to be helpful to him, I knew we had to work on metacognitive strategies. He needed to be able to evaluate himself by himself so that he could work at his own pace. And like I mentioned before, he needed some help with fluency and changing up those sentence constructions. So I met with him about once a week. Oh, here are my standards. So I use the English Language Common Core as well as the Idaho State ELA so that I wouldn't be redundant. But we talked a lot about, you'll see in 7.5, it says planning, revising, editing, and rewriting. We did that. And then in 7.6, use technology. We spent the entire time together online doing research. So, I need to move along here. So now I have the 4 different categories of kind of things we've worked on in reading, listening, speaking, and writing. So he's really good already about reading with a purpose and moving receptive vocabulary into expressive vocabulary. If you go back and look at the samples, he uses words like baculite and celluloid, like he's really good at learning the definitions and then being able to incorporate them into his script. And then he was already good at filtering information. I was impressed that his teacher told him he needed 50 sources for his annotated bibliography, but he was not fazed. He just knew that he needed to work harder. Like I said, he's really good about rising to the challenge. And then he had some visual literacy stuff too, as well as, reading text. He was also receiving information through different video clips, and he had, a whole set of notes of how he was going to work those in. It was really impressive. So that was reading. And then in writing, of course, together we worked on outlining, revising, and editing. And then by the time he had written basically his entire essay, I mentioned before we had to pare it down, he needed to learn how to write for a specific audience, and that audience is a documentary audience. So I was really impressed after talking with him a lot. He learned how to integrate pathos. He really added it into his stuff. You can see here he says, "Hope is not yet lost. Mankind today is at a crossroads. We can decide to change our ways or let the world crumble beneath our feet." And a lot of that really evocative imagery is really powerful in a documentary. So I think that will be really great. In listening and speaking, we worked a lot less because we are so focused on the research end of it at this point in the year. So I kind of made some projections of what I think he needs to work on in the future. He needs to listen to more video clips and be able to comprehend them and synthesize them with prior ideas. And then he needs to be able to integrate those sources into his documentary. He needs to put visuals into a documentary, which is all really hard. Like I said, in speaking, I had a little box here for technology. He'll need more guidance on the listening and speaking, I guess, aspects of his documentary, just because it requires a technological understanding that I don't have. I felt very like I had a big deficit in my knowledge. I wasn't able to help him with that the way I wanted to. But I think as he works with maybe a new mentor, he'll be able to get there. He'll basically just need to be able to present his work in a confident manner, and he could do that through a lot of read-alouds and mock Q&A and things like that. So my general insights in the short time I have left, this is separate from the insights I've had from the class. I've learned just from working with Artemis that teachers need to accommodate to gifted students as much as those who are under level. Artemis was so above his class that I think he spent a lot of time bored. And that's just from conversation that we had. And then As teachers, we also need to be able to break down big assignments into manageable pieces for every student. I learned a lot about the writer's workshop and the process of writing, and I learned about the fixed and growth mindset. And my personal insights is every kid needs a supportive adult. We kind of sometimes focus so much on students who are under level, students who have intellectual disabilities or physical disabilities, and we kind of put the gifted or succeeding students to the side. But every student needs a supportive adult, and Artemis was always really grateful to have 100% of my attention every time I met with him. I was also surprised that he rose to the bar, even though the bar was really high. And then from him, I learned you don't have to micromanage everything they do. Sometimes if you just provide set guidelines and say, go forth, I mean, your students, they can do it. And if they have questions or if they experience some issues, that's good. It means that they're learning and they're putting stuff into practice themselves. And then the last thing I learned is that professionalism is really important. Especially with students, you just love them so much. They're so cute. Artemis is so cute. Some of the things he said I was just like laughing. I was like, man, I love this job. But we have to remember as future professionals that engaging in a way with the student that's motivating, but also not bordering too much on friendship or peer-to-peer. We're not really there to be BFFs as much as we're there to provide guidance, and that's just going to be hard for me because I love this project so much and I love Artemis so much. But I have to remember to always maintain, my teacher face when I'm with the students so that I can be a good mentor for them and maintain their respect and not just be their friends. So anyway, sorry I went a little bit over the time, but I learned a lot from this project. I was really grateful for the opportunity to do some hands-on practice. And I hope you have more time to look through my slides. I have a lot of good information. Thanks.